my pleasure to be speaking with Anula and Jolene today, who I think some of the audience may be familiar with their work in the investing space, and they're going to talk about some of the highlights that they took away from the JP Morgan Health Week a couple of weeks ago, and share their insights, especially with some of the investors who may be on the program watching today. But Anula and Jolene, welcome to the program. For those that aren't familiar with you, if you guys would like to give a quick 30-60 second intro about the work that you're currently doing and where you're based. Anula, we'll start with you.
Hello, everybody. I'm based in California, where it is warmer than on the East Coast. I'm happy to report. Northern California, not Southern California. Kidron Capital invests in women's health, very broadly defined. So not only reproductive health, but areas where women and men are different. And I'm a physician by training and am delighted to be here. Thank you.
No, wonderful to have you on. Jolene?
Yes, also delighted to join our esteemed panelists and share a little bit about what we do. I'm the managing director of VectorPoint Ventures. We are raising an impact fund. I've been a life science investor and a former chapter president for Keiretsu Forum, and really focused on digital health, diagnostics, things that will improve the healthcare outcome, especially for women.
That's wonderful. Thanks both for coming on the program. And we are popping both Anula and Jolene's LinkedIns in the chat, so please do connect with them, whether you're a startup or whether you're a fellow investor and would like to connect with them. I'm sure they'll be very happy to connect with you after the program. But for the both of you, we'd definitely love to hear about some of the key trends and themes that are highlighted at this year's conference, and also your take on how current investors should sort of position themselves in sort of responses to things that were going on 2 weeks ago. Anya, do you want to kick us off with that?
Sure. I was actually thrilled this year, unlike any other year, and I have been going to JPM since 1992. Which is a very long time. It wasn't called JPM then; it was called H&Q. But that aside, it started out as being totally male, suits and very formal. The suits are still there. There are still predominantly men, but was absolutely different this year, from all years past, was the focus on women's health and on women. And a huge part of it is digital health. After all, the unicorns in women's health are digital health companies. So digital health is leading the pack in terms of women's health, and the other areas are catching up. But what was really totally exhilarating, as Stan said, the JP Morgan Core Conference is only a small part of it now. It's so totally flipped. All the activity, in my view, that's really novel and interesting, and breaking borders and grounds and breaking all kinds of rules happen in the associated events. And there were over 20 women's health focused events. And to boot, at the core conference, JP Morgan had 4 events at the core conference on women's health. And one of them focused on a very crucial area for us investors, which is how to channel more money into women's health so it can flourish. So, and then in addition, women in bio had a photo shoot of all the women in pink in Union Square. So it was, I would say, a bonanza year. 2025 has promised to be a bonanza year for women's health, with digital health leading the pack. And I would also add that a similar thing is happening in Davos. And there's been a lot going on in Davos, and I can talk a little bit more about some of the reports that have come. Jolene.
Yes, it's very exciting to see some familiar female faces at the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference. And those of us who've been watching women's health and investment over the last several years are very excited to see the trajectory going the other way, and particularly having Dr. Jill Biden, whom I'm a huge fan of, speak as a keynote. However, I think there are other keynote trends that will impact women's health, and that's the personalized approach and the health tech. And also, as a woman who suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome and was sidelined at the age of 38 from a very successful career, I can tell you the focus on immunology and how we and inflammation is hugely important. There are all kinds of devices that will enable physicians to make better diagnoses and say, instead of telling women that it's all in their head. So that's really an important part. But we also noticed there was a focus at JP Morgan on M&A. There were fewer deals done at the JP Morgan conference this year. I thought it was very, very interesting to see that companies are looking at more seriously at acquiring companies out of China because the data is becoming much more sophisticated. And I think that's really a compelling story. Based in Seattle, we've seen a lot of Chinese companies, a lot of Pacific Rim trade, but we will see how that pans out given the current focus of the administration. But also the AI debate. There's certainly no one questions the fact that AI is here to stay, but exactly what that will produce. I thought the information about AI and blending human intelligence with AI is extremely important. I was on a call earlier this morning with a physician who has a brain cancer research company, and they basically said, they are having a very difficult time getting AI reliable data in that sector. So it's just a tool. It's not the end all to be all, but it's here to stay.
No, that's good.
Tagging off the AI conversation, if I may, Jerry. I think we would all be remiss not to talk about AI. It dominated the conversation, even on the GLP-1 was not as popular as AI. And AI, I think, is going to be very important for women's health in many different ways, because one of the refrains was that, oh, it's too expensive to analyze the data by sex and gender, or we don't have data, or it's bad data. And I think the ideas now being developed on synthetic data, digital twins, and also other really amplified analytic capabilities are going to be very important. So there were 4 reports released around JP Morgan and at JP Morgan on women's health, and I'll just mention them. McKinsey released a blueprint to close the women's health gap. BCG talked about 90 billion and counting, the business case for women's health. Lux Capital had released an article saying artificial intelligence for women's health. I think it's a good read. And then there was the WHAM report, the business case for accelerating women's health. And I think from the investor point of view, the women's health has now a foothold, not just a toehold. However, the flows of financing are still constrained. Very good news about ARPA, which was at ARPA-H, was present at JP Morgan. This is a newly founded government agency who's been focusing on women's health and other areas. And so they presented several times in concert with Jill Biden, as Jolene mentioned. So I think for investors, there are sort of new areas to focus on. And one last thing I want to say in the vein of women's health, the earlier speakers talked about women's health in the context of or pediatric health, which I consider women's health, as in the primary care physician. And this is very important because the GLP-1s has refocused pharma on common chronic diseases, large markets. And I think this is something very important for women's health, because much of women's health is common chronic diseases, just as Jolene talked about. And this is going to be the way forward.
No, that's fantastic. And I think some of the folks in the chat were wondering if you could share some links to some of those reports that you were.
Yeah, I'll put them in the chat.
That'd be really wonderful if you could. But I know we don't have too much time to chat, and you guys have shared some really, really great insights so far. But I know there was a lot of talk around sort of current market conditions at the conference, and you might have shared some things you guys learned about AI and women's health and stuff. But which sectors or asset classes, do you see as sort of the most promising for long-term growth in your opinion? Jolene, we'll start with you.
Well, certainly health tech and diagnostics, things that will empower physicians to make better better diagnoses and move patient care in the right direction. I'm sure Anula will really share her views on this, given her background as a physician. But also oncology, and oncology is here to stay. One of the largest VCs we have here in the Seattle area is really pivoted to therapeutics. We all know that we need to accelerate investment in certain types of cancer, particularly pediatric cancer and brain cancer, colon cancer. It's my expressed opinion that will see extreme investment this year. We know a lot of drugs are coming off patent, and the large drug companies will be looking at investing in earlier stage companies, which bodes well for therapeutics. And those are two of the things. Obesity was mentioned. That's a huge bucket. That's $150 billion, they say, or it's stated by the end of the decade, and still growing.
I don't have much to add to that. Just to reinforce what Jolene said, a lot of us who are physicians have been talking about the need for digital health and diagnostics, both, which I think are undervalued. And I think pharma has been over-indexed. So great that HITLAB is doing an excellent job of trying to reset that balance. And I think it bodes very well for patients in general.
No, absolutely. Anula, Jolene, thanks so much for sharing your insights. I'm sorry we couldn't get you to share even further insights, but we are unfortunately having to move on to the next panel. But everyone in the chat, please do connect with Jolene and Anula on LinkedIn, and do continue the conversation. And no doubt we'll most likely see you both back on the program for some time in the future for 2025. But I really appreciate both of your times. I know you're so busy. So we really appreciate having you on the program.
Thank you so much.